this year's draft, and what does that do in the world of fantasy? Well, experts agree this isn't the strongest class when it comes to QBs, but what about some of those weapons for those players? Backs, receivers, tight ends, they're all coming your way. We got our Super Bowl champ, Bryant McFadden, and our superstar fantasy expert, Dave Richard, joining us now here on HQ. We're going to talk about the top skilled offensive prospects in this year's draft. You can't talk about it without saying Travis Hunter's name. Hunter, the first player in FBS history with 10-plus receiving touchdowns, 5-plus interceptions in his career. We're only going to focus in on the offensive side of things right now. B-Mac, what do you like about this guy?
He's a big-time playmaker. I understand he's a two-way star, but it's hard to really overlook what he does on the offensive side of the football field. Anytime he touches the football, he has an opportunity to be a big-time playmaker, and that leads to what? Points. So if you're a team that has an opportunity to draft Travis Hunter, no question he should play on both sides of the football field. But me personally, I believe, Dave, he has a higher ceiling in terms of catching passes, putting points on the scoreboard. And of course, when you look at the bank account, looking at what wide receivers are making per year, I mean, I think that would be a great decision for him to be able to be more of an offensive guy than a defensive guy.
But it's strange because he wants to do both of those things.
He's made it very
wants
clear
to play 100 snaps a game.
Yeah.
And I would worry about that a little bit as far as, well, is this guy going to be good to go come December and January? But I think if they focus, and the Browns can do this, and that's why, like, I think he's going to Cleveland, so there's no point in putting him with a different team. But the Browns, they've got two guys that are going to be free agents after the year. It's Emerson and Newsome, who are going to be free agents. Maybe they re-sign one of them. Denzel Ward has missed time with concussions over the past couple seasons, other injuries as well. He could potentially go to cornerback as soon as next year. But this year they need him at wide receiver. He had almost an 80% catch rate last year at Colorado. This guy's outstanding. As a wide receiver in fantasy, we're talking about him potentially being a low-end #2 type of option, even with Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett throwing him passes.
There's a lot.
It definitely says a lot. Next up on our list, we're going to talk about Ashton Jeanty. Now, B-Mac, tell me if you heard this one before. Jeanty finished 2024 with the second most rush yards in a season in FBS history. I mean, that's the little stat that's going to be following him everywhere he goes. But an incredibly talented player.
No question. An incredibly talented player. And potentially, we might not see Ashton Jeanty fall outside the top 7. When you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, the traction that we're hearing with Jacksonville being associated with Ashton Jeanty, and of course the Raiders seem to have a big time love for Ashton Jeanty, and of course that's a huge need for him. But I love his contact balance, guys. You never see one player get him on the ground. I love his ability to make people miss, especially in tight spaces, and also too, don't overlook his ability to catch passes out of the backfield. He will be more than a serviceable fantasy player for this upcoming season.
Serviceable.
All right, so you're
more than serviceable.
Right
he
now
might be elite. We're talking about somebody who's going to, and you play fantasy, so let me know how you feel about this. First-round pick as a rookie in fantasy football. We were giving that same type of love to Bijan Robinson when he came out, Saquon Barkley when he came out, Ezekiel Elliott when he came out, and I think if Ashton Jeanty goes to the right place, he can get there too.
Where's the right place, though?
So I think the right place is Denver, and that means that the Broncos are going to have to trade up. Well, we don't know. If Denver really loves him, they could give up a ton to go and get him. But Sean Payton working with running backs, we've seen the track record of Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, even Pierre Thomas, Reggie Bush. These guys get targets. You mentioned that he's a good pass catcher. It's true. 43 catches in 2023. The reason why he didn't have that many in 2024 was he was trying to break Barry Sanders' record, which is what Jenny was talking about. This is a player who can play at this level. He's going to be an elite running back. We were debating on our Fantasy Football Today podcast today whether or not we would take him ahead of Christian McCaffrey in 2025.
It depends on the situation because, Dave, if he does not go, I know I wanted to call your name, but looking at Jenny. Dave, if he does not go to Denver, is he still a first-round running back option?
If he goes to the Jags.
Well, okay, so like that's kind of a worst-case scenario is Jacksonville because that offensive line isn't as good as Denver's, isn't as good as Chicago's, even isn't as good as Las Vegas's offensive line.
I agree.
Those are 3 teams that if Jeanty goes, it's over. He's a first-round pick. He's going to be one of the first 12 players taken in fantasy drafts. Jacksonville, I think he's still going to be one of the first 12 players taken, but that might be a spot where I might say, you know what? Christian McCaffrey might still have a little bit more upside if McCaffrey can stay healthy. That's a huge if, though.
Right.
I love it. Anybody that drafts McCaffrey, they've got to go and they've got to get Isaac Orendo in round 7, round 8. That's just how it's going to be.
We're just throwing that out there right
Jeanty,
now.
you don't have to do that with. You just draft him, and you expect him to be an absolute fire starter
No pressure.
for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Liam Cohen's offense, it was really good for Bucky Irving last year.
It was.
It wasn't bad for Rachaad White in terms of at least targets. Now he's got a running back that's better than both those. It's a running back who's those two guys combined in one body. So he can get a lot of that work. Ashton Jeanty could be an absolute stat machine.
Okay, so that's
Should
a wait and see. A lot of these players obviously wait and see where they end up, but that's a definite wait and see, and then might be.
But he's probably, and Brian, you can tell me if you disagree, he's probably least dependent on where he lands compared to every other player that we talk about from here on out.
What about a player like Ted McMillan? So the receiver out of Arizona, 2024 consensus All-American first team, All Big 12 there. Tell us more about him, B-Mac.
I love how smooth he is when he's running his routes. He reminds me a lot of A.J. Green with his smoothness, the catch radius situation, to be able to excel, to be a big-time fantasy player for this upcoming season, in my opinion.
First of all, he is smooth, maybe not quite to the level of A.J. Green, because that's really a high level, but he is a smooth receiver, and he's like 6'5". He's a giant out there, so it's rare to see a wide receiver do that. He'd be a tough guy to cover, Brian.
Oh, no question.
If you were out there against him, you wouldn't want to do that, and you could see some other receivers that are big who were drafted in the top 10. He could potentially be the next one of them. Okay, I don't know how realistic it is that the Patriots take him, but the one thing that you need if you're going to be a wide receiver that matters in fantasy is targets. Not quarterback. Hey, quarterback isn't a problem. It's an issue too, but you need targets. And who's catching the ball right now in New England? You've got Stephon Diggs, who's coming off the ACL. No idea how effective he'll be.
No shoes, Mac Hollins. He wears no shoes.
Well, no shoes, Mac Hollins is going to be no stats, Mac Hollins. If somebody like Ted McMillan ends up going to New England, he could be in line for 120-plus targets. That's the number that we look for. This is another wide receiver where if the opportunity is right, if he's not sharing, if he's not the 1B guy, like if he goes to Jacksonville, he's not going to be the 1A. It's still going to be Brian Thomas.
Yes.
And so that's going to worry me as far as target volume goes. But if he goes to a team like potentially the Raiders, although they've got Bowers, they've got Jacoby Myers, so maybe not the best example, but New England's the best example. He's the #1 guy. There's no question who the #2 guy is. That's when we can talk about him being a top 30 fantasy receiver. Let me ask you a question
with McMillan, right? Do you see a potential, considering the right situation, an emergence of fantasy production like we saw from Brian Thomas, like we saw from Malik Neighbors, or do you see more of the Marvin Harrison Jr. type of production for a guy like Ted?
Well, Marvin as a rookie wasn't very good for fantasy, so if you're talking about that, I don't see that. I see him closer to Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors. And you want to talk about, well, by comparison to Marvin Harrison as a rookie. Marvin Harrison, by the time Peyton Manning was hitting his groove, was at a level better than that, so I'm not sure what you were talking about.
I'm talking about the junior in Arizona.
Oh, I thought you were talking about senior. You didn't say the junior. No one wants to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's what I'm saying.
Because he looked lost out there.
What's more realistic for Ted McMillan? More of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s
I think he's going to be somewhere in between, and I'm not trying to take a cop out here.
I think you are.
No, I don't. Look, I don't think he can be as productive. And look at that smile, Malik Neighbors and Brian.